15, 16.
Yeah, I'm sorry, verse 16. And I appreciate you all being here. And like I said, have several prayer requests, especially remember my brother, he has kind of got some bad news the other day, and we're just praying for him. And I mean, sometimes you just got to trust the Lord. I don't have any answers, and I prayed with him, tried to give him some encouragement best I could. And I thought about that a little bit all week, so many times. We talked about last week, truth. How hard is it to put them things together, truth and freedom? And we don't realize how tied all these little things are. And we just listen sometimes and accept everything that people tell us, and we got to be so careful. But what I'm going to talk to you about maybe this week and next week, I hope only 2 weeks. But I titled this, Even Jesus Needed Help. And what's important about this is, what is one of the hardest things for anybody to do? Ask for help. Yep. Unless somebody's a professional looter, and then they can ask for help all they want. Yeah. We'll leave that alone, right? I mean, there's some people that just, okay. But for the most part, Brother Hayes being facetious, but for the most part, how many people struggle to ask for help?
Yeah.
We just do. It's embarrassing, and you feel kind of guilty. Why can't I do this?
Ashamed.
And I mean, I try to instill that in Brandon. Hey, you need to try to do things on your own first. Don't just come have somebody do it for you. Try to get them. Because I think we're facing a thing in our world right now where people kind of have lost that sense.
One of the tough things to get through is people all have cell phones.
Yeah.
Or they try to figure it out, they get on the phone. When I get there, they're still in the pickup on the phone.
That's what Google's for.
You don't come out and see what I'm doing and correct something. They're on their phone.
Yep. And we talked about this a lot. Doris and I talked about this too. That Google stuff, you better be real careful with it. As this AI comes online more and more, you're going to start finding more and more things in there that are just not true. And it's frightening. But how many people will swear by whatever this says? Yep. And, I think about that all the time. And I like what Ronald Reagan said. And Doris's daddy, Brother O'Neill, always used to say this. Trust, but verify. Yeah. You can trust all you want. Somebody gives their heart to the Lord, you trust that they did. But how do you verify that? You keep an eye to see what's going on. How they're doing. Yeah. And see if they're kind of changing a little bit and how things are. I know we don't have as many young ones here, so I won't pick on you too much. I'll try to be nice. Yeah. Maybe Christine and her daughter come. Then you guys are friends. There's 2 of them. But one of the things is, most of the people here have known me for a very long time. So Fred hasn't known me that long. But and I know you being young, it's hard to trust people. But one of the things you have to verify is Brother Hay means what he says when I say things or when I'm teaching, or because if you really do believe those things, hey, Brother Randy.
Hey, little big guy.
We got you a spot. No, it's all part of that.
All righty then.
But so when we're doing all that kind of stuff, and we're trying to do that when we do even pray, like for my brother, and we'll get your prayer requests. We got to trust God. And how do we verify what He says is true? Because we know that He's not going to let us down. One way or the other, we'll get an answer. It might not be the answer we want. It might be a complete different answer. Yeah. And sometimes we have to understand that. And so as we get ready to pray tonight, I just want to encourage you. Don't be discouraged by what you see. That's why it says we walk by faith and not by sight. Because some things, no matter how much we want to, we're just not in control. Like Larry and I were talking about the other day. It's bad when you start getting old. All of a sudden, you start getting older and you're like, whoa, this ain't cool. And so...
And it catches you off guard.
Yeah, it does. And so,
It's not so cool.
so when Brother Hayes is talking about that, like, and the reason I said that, because I know you don't really know me, but even if it's my brother, I have to trust the Lord for that. No matter what that outcome is. Does that make sense? And so if I tell you to trust the Lord, oh, who had the baby?
My friend at work,
Oh,
that's her second grandchild.
well, that's cool.
Who is it?
Liz Chavez.
Oh, okay.
Now she got 2 grandbabies?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a week by 12.
That's it? I got
Yeah, but
I
she's
got
only
16.
44.
I was 36 when my first one came. Yep.
Ain't even gonna go,
Okay,
okay,
let's
I'm
go
back
not
to
comparing
prayer
anything, I'm
request.
just saying, she's only 44. Okay?
All right,
It
back
wasn't a
I've got
competition.
16 of them, so.
All right, back to prayer requests. So, what Brother Hay is saying, if you have a prayer request, don't be afraid to mention them. And if you don't want anybody to know what you're praying for, that's okay.
Pray for Shiley.
And Shiley's
Yep.
at the hospital. She's been there since 4 o'clock
They
this morning.
induced her at 4 a.m. this morning, and she was only 2 centimeters at 4:20 this afternoon.
Whatever that means, Brother Hay's like,
Wow.
okay.
She's
that-
dilated.
It's about that big.
She ain't very big at all.
That means she got
I,
one more.
I,
They can
used,
use
I used to give Rosie a hard time over the kids. All the nurses didn't like her because then she goes, "I feel something poke their baby." Nathaniel was her worst one, and she was in labor for 15 minutes, and that was it.
When my Sarah was born, the doctor came in and said, "Oh, you're 9 centimeters." By the time the doctor got to the end of the hall, I was catching my daughter. I'm like, "Hey, you better get back here."
My daughter.
Yeah, that might be some more things to pray. Never mind.
Oh, sad. He has surgery. It's either tomorrow or Friday.
Yeah, remember Hope's dad, her and Mariah are on the way there.
They're there.
They're there, I mean, in Oklahoma. He's gotta have some stuff done. Any other prayer requests while we're praying? Continue to remember Sister Wanda. Is she getting her treatments?
Oh, yeah, I ain't gonna be crazy, but, you know, she had that breast cancer and they did radiation. A lot of discoloration
Mm-hmm.
and it caused her to get real tired. And she says, Monday will be her last. She's always these old days. He said Monday, but I think it might be Tuesday. But then she gotta wait to see another doctor over there Thursday.
Oh, my goodness.
So,
I mean, that's next week.
yeah, definitely want to remember in prayer. Remember all our kids,
Yes.
families,
Program
and prayers.
Sunday.
Yeah, remember the program Sunday. The kids, they've been working really hard. And it gets to be stressed. Pray for all the adults because they're the ones that really stress.
Right.
The kids would be like, we got this. But
Kids are fun.
yeah, they're having fun because they're stressing out the adults and we'll be down all the
That's not what it is.
Exactly what it is.
All right, let's just pray real quick.
Yep.
Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity we've had to be in your house. And Lord, even for those that didn't make their requests known, Father, we know that you're able, God, to touch and to minister. And Father, we just put things in your hands because there's none greater than you. And we just ask that you administer to each and every one. Help us to receive from you and help us to have open hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so we're in Mark chapter 15, and I'm just going to read this, and then we'll kind of get started. It says, then the soldiers led him away, they're talking about Jesus, into a hall called Praetorium, and they called together the whole garrison. They clothed him with purple, they twisted a crown of thorns, put it on his head, began to salute him, Hail, King of the Jews. They struck him on the head with a reed, they spit on him, and bowing the knee, they worshipped him. And when they had mocked him, they took the purple off of him, put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. And then they compelled a certain man named Simeon, a Cyrenian, the father of Alexander and Rufus, as he was coming out of the country and passing by, to bear his cross. And the reason I kind of wanted to do this, I know it's Easter week, I know Friday's Good Friday, and it's a time of year, especially as a Christian, we start trying to think on these things. But I want to remind you what is so interesting, Brother Hay, in this scripture. Of all all the people that didn't need help, Jesus was that guy. And you say, what do you mean by that, brother? Hey, he could have called 10,000 angels. Right? He could have ended it right there. He could have stopped that. And more importantly, he had the power to do that. And so sometimes we forget that Jesus endured so many things for us. He didn't have to. But, you know, he looked out into the future, and we have a hard time understanding this sometimes. But he looked out into the future and saw us.
What I have a hard time with is knowing that Jesus was praying for me in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yes.
That's right, he was.
And I have a hard time with that.
Because, you know, we all think about those things, right? Do you agree, brother? But here's the thing I want to remind you. How many times have things in our life overwhelmed us? And what is so cool about this, and Jorge's been doing this for a long time, but I don't know that I ever hear anybody hardly ever preach about the guy that helped carry Jesus' cross. We talk about the donkey, right?
Yeah.
We talk about the Lord's Supper. We talk about the resurrection. We talk about the crucifixion. We talk about all the things that went on there. But how many times do we even mention the poor guy that had to help carry his cross?
Yeah.
But here's what I think about that.
Simeon from Cyrene.
Yep. And here's what I want you to kind of think, and you guys give me your opinion. You think maybe he was allowed to help Jesus so that we could understand that there's times we need help?
Yep.
I mean, think about it. How many Christians out there are like, I got this. I'm so spiritual. I've had people in my lifetime tell me things, and I'll look at them and say, man, that statement scares me.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Because I've had people tell me, I'm so spiritual, God told me I'm going through the tribulation.
Yeah, okay.
The first thought that comes in my mind is,
Power to him.
okay, I think you're going to change your mind in about the first 15 minutes of that.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And we have this, I don't know, inflated thing where we kind of think we're this island to ourselves. And I don't know how many of you saw that bridge come down.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Is that pretty scary or what?
That was like, wow.
It's a big bridge in Maryland.
Maryland.
They came
There
down.
was a big gap he could have went through, and all of a sudden he's going not toward that support.
But he
Yeah,
was
but
losing
He
power.
lost power.
Yeah.
Lost power, Lost power,
Yes,
he
but
lost steering.
his angle, he should have been way out there.
Should have been
coming
way out
straight through,
Who'd have thought?
But he's coming right through.
I questioned that when I saw the video too. I was
Espionage.
like,
Well, they said they did try to put the anchor out.
Yes, but that's the fact, because it takes over a mile for that thing to stop.
And so what I'm thinking is maybe that anchor grabbed it and started turning it. But here's Jorge's point. That thing just didn't hit that hard. It didn't smash the bow of the boat.
Yeah.
It didn't look like it hit it hard at all, really.
They said it wasn't structured very well.
And it just went.
They're supposed to have so-called fenders around that collies and stuff like that, but they didn't have any of that.
Was anybody killed?
Oh no, this is just a
yeah,
huge
some
bridge.
people died, yeah.
People in
Like
cars.
six people. It's like a bridge that goes. It's probably over a mile long.
Mile .6.
Mile and a half long. How'd you like to be driving over that bridge every day?
No.
I was watching
I've
cars.
driven over the Coronado Bridge and that was long enough.
Well, you know, and that curves.
I've been under the Coronado and one time
Yeah.
I've been on
And
it.
then,
Oh my
Like
God.
it's Golden Gate, I've been
no
under
more
it four
cars.
times and I've been
I
on
did, but then, I guess on the other side of
in
that,
the Navy.
pylons and stuff like that, where the construction workers were at,
Yeah.
there's a big hill.
And so
Concord Naval Weapons Station.
the thing Jorge's saying is how something so small of an impact could have such a big impact. Now it's going to be months while they're trying to clear out the bay and, you know, all the things that go along with it. And I always think about, wow. And in my mind, sometimes we don't even realize how fragile we really are sometimes. And the reason I'm saying that is, we're fragile physically as well as spiritually, and we need that help. We need those people to come alongside of us. Now, what does Jesus say? He says, pick up your cross, right, and follow him, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But here's a guy that illustrated what Jesus meant, because how many think we have a responsibility to help each other?
Help carry the other's burden.
Yep.
We're supposed to take care of each other.
Yeah. And so the first thing I have on your paper is in 1 Corinthians 10, 12, and 13, it says, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And it says, no temptation has overtaken you except it is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it. And the thing I have under that is talking about how many times we've been beat down in life. You think about Jesus, he physically was beat down. You know, I've heard preachers preach and say Jesus, he didn't feel no pain.
Oh,
He didn't feel the hits. He didn't feel the humiliation.
Well, doesn't it say that he
Yeah.
was beat beyond recognition?
Yep.
So that means his face was like a hamburger, you know?
You know,
And-
go ahead.
No, go ahead, baby.
I was, in my devotion today, I was reading about, it was talking some about that, you know, the resurrection and stuff.
We all
When they
forgot to put
approached
it in.
him, they thought, you know, he's the son of God, blah, 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 blah. And they expected somebody, special to look upon, that was unique and had good features and stuff. But then it said, Jesus was a comely man. Nothing about him was attractive. So
Yeah,
he lowered himself to our standards to prove to us that he could feel what we feel. And nobody's temptation is unique. Everybody's had
And
their
he
And I
own.
read that there's nothing about Jesus that would just outwardly attract you to it.
Yep.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's why they said he couldn't be the king or the son of God, because he didn't have those attributes or whatever. The looks.
But they missed the whole point. Him, you know, coming.
You're in trouble.
That's my work phone.
Uh-oh.
But that is true. I mean, it wasn't like you see in these pictures of him, that he stood out like that. I've looked on the internet, and nobody knows exactly what he looked
No, they
like.
don't.
But some people say that he was black, that he looked like a
I
gorilla.
believe he's dark skinned because he
But
was a
that's the
Jew.
way they were
Well,
at the time.
You know that conspiracy with the Shroud of Turin?
Yeah.
They've proven that was a fallacy.
Yes. But, they got all these different things.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
And I don't know about you, but how many of you guys, especially in here, you don't think that you would feel somebody spitting on you?
Well, yeah, you would.
just the.
Oh,
So
You don't think they feel you back?
I think that's the most disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like, you can hit me whatever, but that part is.
That part is very,
No.
So downgrading.
And see, I think it's important that we get this out there that Jesus really went through these things.
Yes, he felt everything.
And so the reason that he had to help him carry that cross is because he physically was unable to continue carrying it.
when you lose a lot of blood,
And broke bones and whatever else.
your strength is gone.
Comes out of it.
My dad kind of bled to death from an internal bleed. And he got to a point where he just could no longer stand up. He just fell down.
And so the very first one I put on here, we're talking about this temptation thing, and I always used to tell people, they go, well, what do you mean that it's common to man? I said, look, there's nothing new under the sun. Everybody agreed with me that Satan still uses the same tricks he's always used.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's so dumb, he don't know people are onto him sometimes.
Well, the problem is, people are so dumb,
This
they
is
don't
true.
see it coming.
That's true.
That's it.
That's
That's
exactly.
how he's able to get to you.
And that's how he gets in there, right?
He knows human nature better than
Anybody. He's got millenniums that,
And
you know.
Right.
I always laugh because
practice-
sometimes the simplest things trip up the most sophisticated of people. And spiritually speaking, especially, I've seen people that were very strong spiritually and then end up getting all confused over something so simple that it's hard to get your arms around. Think about this, and I know a lot of you are probably too young, but most of us can remember this. Back in the day when they started all this, kind of, you proved how spiritual you were by how much stuff you had.
Yeah.
And
Materialistic
the more spiritual you were, the more God give you.
prosperity.
And so you have the prosperity thing, as Sister Egg says, but let's just break it up. That went into every aspect of life. They carried it so far that if you got sick, they almost were like Job's friends. It's your fault. You got some secret sin somewhere.
You don't know, stop to think about it, your life is one of the big problems. He died of an illness.
Yep. And so we look at this kind of stuff, right? And we kind of glance over this and we kind of miss. I mean, if you ever saw that one that Mel Gibson did of the Passion of the Christ, you gotta be careful about young kids watching that. I will tell you
A lot of us used to watch it.
It's pretty
Yeah.
graphic.
It's
I've
real.
seen some scenes, I said, no, I don't wanna watch
that. It is really graphic.
Yes.
And
Yeah, at the beginning when the guards got him. All the other movies you see that was made back 100 years ago, oh, come here, and they've got a whole thing walked him.
Yeah.
They got him just beat him right there.
That's
And that's
that's
more
more
realistic
realistic than any of it.
than all of that,
And the thing that was so important about that is people had a lot of issue with that because people don't want to identify with the suffering Christ. But they do want to identify with the prosperous one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The one they think can give them everything that they need, whether it's health, money, whatever, right? That's who they want to identify Jesus as.
The good side of it, not the bad side.
But if we didn't have this illustration,
It's all the same, man. It's all
Yeah.
together.
if we don't have this illustration, how hard would it be for us sometimes? Because we are physically beat down sometimes.
Mentally, physically.
Mentally, emotionally.
And people don't think too much about it, and so when we start talking about things, but the reason Jesus understands is because of the beating he took for us. And that's important. Because sometimes, we can take beatings for other people to a certain extent, right? And I took a few for my brothers and my sister.
Which brothers? Larry, Danny,
I don't know.
Bill, Walt,
Yeah.
little guys.
Yeah. And if you come from a big family, you have a lot of little ones. Trust me when I tell you this. But here's the thing: no matter, and Brother Hayes is giving you a hard time, but how many times is it even hard for us to have compassion on people that are struggling?
Hard.
It's almost sometimes like, I don't know, Brother Rainey, it's like people are afraid they're going to catch what they got.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
really.
It's almost like they got this struggle going on. I don't want to get too close because they'll jump on me.
Well, yeah, treat them like they have a plan.
Well, they did that.
40, 50 years ago, a hitchhiker, you wouldn't pass him by, you picked him up.
Yeah.
Him or her,
Yeah.
Anymore,
No, you can't trust them.
no, I don't think it's a good.
Back in the 80s, I used to hitchhike all over the country.
Now, about 15 years, 20 years ago, I think it was, in the wintertime, I was going somewhere and I seen this woman with a little kid that's colder than Dickens. Well, I stopped and got them. That thought never entered my mind. And I took them where they needed to go, but it was a long ways.
But how much has things changed? I was teasing Kaylee because I listened to the 70s and they were singing that song, Hitching a Ride. I told her, I said, hey, this used to be my favorite song. I'd be out there like this all the time because when I didn't have a car, it's like, I got to get to work.
That's what you
Put my thumb up, be hitching me a ride.
I did that and see some friends once. I got out on the highway, stuck my thumb out, the first car stopped, gave me a ride all the way over to the interstate. And then let me off at an exit. A friend of mine drove up that exit when he let me off.
Try that nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays you might have to come home.
What you said about that, that you're gonna catch whatever they got. when my son Nathaniel had those seizures, he had one in front of Pat's, and he fell out almost out in the road right there. And I got hold of him, pulled him back, and the woman got hold of me and literally pulled me back. She goes, "You're gonna catch it." And I said, "Really?" I said, "If I'm gonna catch it, I already got it."
Yeah.
I knew what he was going, but she's never seen somebody with have a seizure before.
And think about how, when we see people struggling, we don't come to their aid. I think that is so important that we start trying to do that. Kind of have that heart that's softened a little bit. And look, Brooklyn's not going to lie to you. You know, Fred mentioned this last week. That's one of the hardest things in the world to do. Because you try to live up to an expectation. And I don't mean put words in your mouth like Fred, but you try to live up to this expectation spiritually, right? And unless somebody comes alongside of you and says, "Hey, this is unrealistic," right? And it's not a bad thing to try to live as spiritual as you can. But then it goes back to that other side. What is that person that's holding you to that standard? What standard are they living to?
What are they living by?
See, I'm always that guy. And I get in more trouble with this, but I believe this with all my heart. If I'm going to stand up there and preach that you got to give your last dollar because we need it, I better be giving my share.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I better not be going home to a multi-million-dollar house with a multi-million-dollar bank account and writing my check for $10,000.
Yeah. Now, don't be telling me about that mansion we got.
Yeah,
Florida.
Florida.
Nothing small.
The one that fell in the sink.
Yeah, the one that drowned him. I mean, the one that sunk.
Yeah. Trust me.
It was built on the sand.
If we had a mansion anywhere, it wouldn't be in Florida because she don't like
I
Florida.
hate Florida.
But anyway,
Same here.
It wouldn't be Illinois, it'd be in Kansas.
Kansas. Look,
Kansas or
anyway.
Missouri. I'd love to live in one of those.
Build one in Australia.
I want to live on an island in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
But does it make sense what Jorge's saying? And how often do we think about that stuff?
And if you want to live like that, how much are people on the side trying to pull you back down? You know, okay, and I'll pick on you, you need help, but Randy here, he don't need it, but he wants the same thing, so you're giving the same stuff to him, and he just using it,
Yeah.
And I'm just picking on this, don't
I know.
smack you at the table here.
But isn't that true?
But it's true.
It's
It's
so-
hard to stick it out there, because you don't know if they're
If
gonna need it or
if
not.
they're gonna use it or if they need it.
Sister Hay and I have this discussion a lot of times. I'm not going to do that because I know what they're going to do with it. Well, once you let go of it.
That's why I don't let go of it.
There have been days
You know, there is a point, no,
I drove away from
firmly
somebody
believe
and I
there's a
had
point
to turn
when you
around and
enable
go back
someone to do,
and say,
So,
okay, here,
I will,
I've given this to you.
gladly take.
I don't know if you're gonna do the right thing with it or not, but
Well,
there it is.
for food or gas, you think, yeah, but all the drugs or.
You know,
Well,
if he needs something, he'll have it, but he's not getting dollar bills off of it.
I had trouble with this one person because I had to sign one week, said they had 3 kids, next week they only had 2.
Sometimes.
The 3 crossed out and had 2, I
Other
was
people
like,
don't, but sometimes.
oh, really?
I seen this one person for 2 months needing gas money. You know, wherever he was going, and I thought, she ain't got that money, but now you might as well give it up, dog.
It ain't
Yeah, my fuel.
Yeah, better get something else. But that's kind of what Jorge wants you to think about, because all these temptations that we go through, and sometimes we're feeling kind of boxed in there, and we're feeling like Jesus can't understand our stress. Man, for me, the second I read this and I think about them guys spitting on them, that's as far as I'll ever have to go.
Yeah.
I mean, in my head, that is like the ultimate insult that you can do.
I would have died right there, they would kill me right there.
Yeah, it would have been over. And you look at that and you think, man, but here's what's so bad about it. You know, he didn't have to go Chuck Norris on him, right? Or Steven Seagal or whatever action guy you want to think about, right? Jesus wouldn't even have had to do that. All he had to do was say the word. It would have been done. Instant. And so what even makes it more amazing to Brother Hay is the fact that he did it voluntarily.
Nobody
For me.
forced him.
And see, that's where the difference comes in. And that's why, see, Sister, I have to kind of work on her on this area. Because sometimes you have to voluntarily do something that you really don't wanna do.
Yeah.
But how hard is that?
No.
Well, you got kids, there's times that you don't wanna do this, but you have to.
But then I think, okay, I know when I read this scripture what Jesus went through. Now all of a sudden when I read this scripture talking about temptation overtaking me, okay? And it says, hey, I'm not gonna let you have more than you can bear. And then I start thinking about what he bore for me. All of a sudden, you know what, I can square my shoulders a little and
Don't
kind of
seem so
sit up a
bad.
little bit and kind of say, you know what? Oh yeah, I'm okay. And I got a letter on Tanya today, so far now they've went through all my kids just about. And so I got one on Tanya today, and I told Sister A, I said, man, these guys are trying to kill me. and then when I'm driving to Clovis, they want to go with me. I said, probably not a good idea today, baby. You better stay here with Mama. But
You may see a side of dad that you don't want to see.
well, I'm praying because I'm like, Lord, you gotta help me here because I can't do what I really want to.
Yes,
But
I thoroughly agree with what you said.
and the last one I would have took is Sister A.
I thoroughly agree that thing you said. God, just turn your eye just for a minute. Just have a minute,
and
just 1 minute.
I'll kill him now and ask for forgiveness.
Yeah. 'Cause
Well,
whenever you go through that stuff, these people are. I don't think that they're deliberately trying to hurt you,
No.
but it just
Sometimes it feels that way though, it's like
it
they
feels like
targeted.
they're digging it out of their pocket and
Yeah.
you got to get a crowbar in there to.
Yeah.
And it's like this ain't coming out of your pocket, is because I've had
Because
to go
people
through
are
this stuff and
changing
you
the
fight and
definition
you
of
fight
the word.
and
They
then
keep changing definitions of words, but Tanya said something's real important. It's like, but Jesus don't ever turn away.
he's that rock in the middle,
And that's what we forget sometimes. He don't turn away. So we got to work on turning away. But how many times do we feel like nobody's got it as bad as us? And I tell people this all the time. When somebody starts saying something about somebody, I go, hey, you don't know their backstory. You just need to leave that alone. You don't know what's going on.
Well, I thoroughly agree that no matter how bad you got it, it can get worse.
Yep.
Well, and there's always somebody worse off than we are.
Oh yeah,
We always got the okay me, poor me, poor
because
me.
I did that
I'm sure you-
losing.
You think you remember this, one time out there, I come from the shop,
You know what?
working at it, come in the office and door's partly open. Well, I'm on camera, the gate is open, you leave it open.
Yeah.
If it's closed, you close it.
They think
Yeah.
they're
So-
content, they're not content.
Walk through and I
Here's
stood
where
back out where it was at, went on, talked to one of the owners, come back out, and one of the other owners, as I was walking toward the
it's
door,
right
he
in
says,
here.
learn how to shut the door. I stopped in my track, I didn't turn around. I thought,
Right.
if I turn around, and if I say one word, I'll say a whole bunch. So, I went on through, but guess what happened after that? I don't know how long ago it was after that. I had a dream that same night, because he was a groucher. Even his own brothers didn't like him. He was just,
That says a lot.
and that guy, always tried to say good morning, he just look up and look down. He's that kind of guy, so one night I had a dream. He was smiling.
That was a nightmare, huh?
I don't know if it's,
Right?
Yes,
Huh?
I say, who says God doesn't have a sense of humor?
Well, he has.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I never forgot it. I said, I guess God's trying to tell me something. And it goes back to
Yeah,
this.
that's true.
He sees how we are, but he knows what we can do.
Yes.
So I thought of that. Okay. So I continued on saying good morning. And once I said, he just opened up, started talking and had an enjoyable conversation. I said, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't stop and turn around and say some words.
So God was showing you what he can.
Yeah, exactly.
But how hard is it for us to accept that?
But how hard it is for us to even be mindful of that stuff unless God hadn't interceded.
Yep.
Right, that's true.
What, baby?
You know what's real funny?
You?
Get out of here. And you can even ask my dad this, because he's done it several times. But I was in Clovis with him one time, and I don't remember who it was. but some people were asking him for food. And at first, he drove by, but then he had a guilt trip, like a guilt feeling. You probably don't even remember any of this.
Oh, I'm sure I do, but anyway.
Anyways, and I looked at Dad, he looked at me, I told him to turn around, he turned around, or he turned around, gave the money. I said, "No, do you feel better?" He said, "Yes, I do." I said, "Now feed me."
But here's the thing. You have to back up your words with action. And so when I think about Jesus being in that room that day, and being in that hall, whatever they wanted to call it, is probably a bigger place. But I think about him being there, and I think about all the action that he did in that one time frame. Back up everything he said. All of a sudden, you think about the Sermon on the Mount, or you think about him being the Good Shepherd, or you think about him being the way, or him being the truth, and all those things. If he'd called 10,000 angels, we probably wouldn't be here.
That's true.
Right. There was no other way.
And so he understood that. And so sometimes I think what we got to remember is sometimes in this life we get what people say dealt a bad hand or whatever, however they want to describe it.
But Jesus' plan was set down from the foundation,
That's right.
because they knew there was gonna be no other way.
Yep. And this is going to surprise you, but you know, I really believe God has a plan for every one of us. Sometimes we get
Well,
kind of
in the
scary.
Bible even says that, you know, we were predestined, you know.
He said he knew us before we were ever born, when we were in our mother's womb.
Right, don't get our mind. And there's another scripture, I can't remember what it was that said the same thing. I knew you before you were born in the womb.
Yep. So if he knew us, right, how many think that he probably has a plan for us? But how hard is it for us to get lined up? And somebody told me one time, they said, well, I don't think anybody can know the will of God. I said, oh yeah, it's real simple. It's right here. You know what it is? One foot in front of the other.
Yeah, study yourself a few.
Keep walking. We used to have a lady that came to church, she's an older lady, she's in her 80s when she did this. Her favorite song, she would sing. She'd sing it, keep on walking. And she'd sing that song. And man, she'd get all excited. And she was way up in her 80s. And I used to love to hear her sing that song. How many know if a 20-year-old sung it, you're like, okay.
Whatever.
What do you got to worry about? You're only 20.
Yeah, you hadn't even started yet. Right?
You know what? No, I don't agree with that though.
I look at this picture of
youngest
myself
of the
when I was a
youngest
baby and often wonder what
Have,
was I
they face
thinking
stuff
about.
every day.
Oh, yeah.
The little kids, they face stuff every day.
You gotta wonder, what was I thinking
Nope,
about? That's
no,
me
I mean,
when I was a
they're-
little guy.
No,
I
same
don't know,
exact them,
Reverend.
same way
You
exact
some-
them.
Yeah.
That's what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
But
I know food's coming.
And we talked about what she said about the kids facing
I
all
said,
this
the
stuff.
kids are facing stuff
Or
that's
they
not
wouldn't
fair.
have you.
Okay, let me emphasize this. The first definition of an orphan is one loses his daddy and mom.
Yes.
The second definition was an animal loses his mother.
Yep.
The third definition is denied protection and advantage.
My dad.
That's where raising up the child in the admonition of the Lord. It's that parent's obligation
Yes, it is.
to send that kid out prepared.
To the best of their
But you know
ability.
what? In today's society, now even looking back when we did foster care, I thought some of these poor kids, it was nothing compared to what's going on today. These kids have nobody that they can rely on. You know, they're just out there wandering around.
Can you imagine how many so-called orphans nowadays
Mhm.
are on that path to destruction?
Yeah.
Because,
They have
and
no
I
guidance.
know parents, they get involved in stuff at work, whatever, they have other situations, I empathize with that.
Yeah.
But still, the kid, there's gonna be a multitude of them prepared for destruction.
Yes.
And that's why, as Christians, we can't shirk our responsibility.
Well, that little guy Logan, I mean, from what I'm
This kid's a
seeing,
hot mess.
his parents are, they just farm him out to us because they don't know what to do with him.
But you know
Like
what,
you said
Randy,
there, that
he's
they have
not
on
that
that part.
bad.
He's not, he's a great
You
kid.
can rein him in. They said that about Malachi. Remember our little Malachi? he went home with us one day. You couldn't have asked for a better kid. He's sitting there with me and Don most of the day instead of playing with Brandon. Like he's 21 or 25 years old. You know, it's like, dude, you know you want to go play with kids.
Yeah, go.
You know, you want to go play with the little guys, with Brandon. He said, no, I'll just sit here. Okay, well, let's just sit there then. But, you know, there's so many of them out there, they don't have anybody.
Well, the way that you described it there, the society, the government and the society, they drove that wedge in the family where mom and dad go to work and they can't teach their kid, they can't raise them up, no matter how hard they
But you
try,
got these-
this
You
everyday
destroy-
life is
You
gonna
destroy
be.
the family, you destroy
Yeah.
your nation.
Yes. And that's
Right,
what's happening.
you know.
Look at these kids. Mom's taking their
So there's no
9-year-old
proper
boy
guidance.
identifies as a cat. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, for reals,
There's no guidance.
is anybody that stupid
So the
to
thing
think that your
outside,
guy
you can't-
Dad
can't
told him
everything.
to leave the table? He said, why? He said, you can eat out of the cat's dish. So he told him, go, swat, get off the table, I'll put the cats on the table. So the kid got all hurt. And he's come back after a little, he also told him, he said, can I go to my room? He said, your room's out there in the garage, that's where the cats sleep.
Oh.
So then he
With the
goes,
litter box.
and do we need the bathroom? There's a litter box. And then it was because he learned his lesson. He come back in a little bit and told his dad, he said, I'm sorry. He said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a cat. He said, well, then you can sit down and eat your dinner.
But here's,
You know?
Well,
Or dad.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you do have to call their bluff.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Daddy
Yeah.
did that to me. I'm going to run away. I used to tell him, I'm running away. So he got me a stick. If you do not put me a couple clothes in a big old rag and tied it to that stick, he said, I'll
I
see
had
you
the
later.
same thing, my parents did to me,
It
I was
broke
going
my
on away.
heart. And I walked to my next door
There's some
neighbor's
crackers
house.
for you,
He
and
was in there,
here's
I was
a,
crying.
a
And
little
then she
can of
told
water.
Dad
and you
said
eat
that was
one
over there,
more.
and Daddy said let her stay for a while.
I did that when I was a kid.
He let me
I-
stay over there
I
for a
told my
little
mom I
while.
was gonna run
And he
away
come
when
and
I
got
was
me. It's
7.
like,
Nobody
I never
was
told him
allowed
that
to
again, though.
This is
Stop out on the block.
The same, similar.
You know my mom
mine,
was.
yeah, I ain't across the street. I feel
She's
what-
10.
Moms will take
She
me
said
that
she was
way.
gonna run away. She got a stick outside and she got,
I was
a
never so
handkerchief,
glad
you
that
know,
we
the
moved away from that
bandana,
house with the willow tree.
put whatever she needed in there,
Willow tree.
tied it up, went to the stick, and she was,
We had peach trees
and I
out
just
there.
watched her, you know, and, okay.
I might have been 8 or
Didn't
9
take her
years
long
old,
to come back.
but I never, ever said I was running away.
Mom said,
That's
well,
the
give
one
me a
you
switch, boy.
go, you'll find out how to get
Yes.
cattle when you don't have to
If you brought back the wrong kind, you went right back and got a good one.
No, them moms
But I knew I
got
could go to the neighbors. They were older people.
She
That's what
did
she did.
she went to her
My mom gave
friends.
me one.
She called Daddy. Daddy said, well, just let her stay
Yeah,
there
that's
for a while.
exactly right.
Well,
It was
and
different.
now let's think about some of this stuff. So you can do all that and you can say those things and you can be an example to them. But how many think that the individual has some responsibility?
They do. Yes, they do.
What would have happened if he would have said, I'm not carrying that cross? Of course, I don't think he was saying no because there's probably Roman guards there that would have killed him. So he probably looked at his options and said, yeah, probably a good thing to do. I don't think this is,
Compelled means convinced.
yeah, compelled means forced.
Yeah.
Compelled, I guess it's not as strong in our language today as it probably was then.
A strong urging.
A strong urging.
Yeah,
In other words,
motivation.
you better die.
It's like, I'm gonna urge you to death, you better do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The force behind it, and that's part of what our issue is. But I always think about when you're going through all the stuff, and he was, and according to legend, and according to people that think they know, this particular person that later on ends up being crucified himself, and so he lost his life over his relationship with Christ. And I think about all those moments that we have that are defining moments in our life. Okay? Sister Hayes, defining moment trying to run away when you're 9. Irving did that once with
Oh,
us.
yeah, he was about 23, 24. He wanted me to take him to Roswell. I said, I'm not taking you to Roswell. I'll walk. I said, bye. And
He's
he
standing
says,
out in front of our house
and he
going
tells
like
me, he
this.
says, what about a bus ticket? I said, what about a bus ticket? Get a bus ticket? I said, do you have the money for one? No. You buy it? I said, I'm not buying you no bus ticket, dude, to go to Roswell. He knew nobody in Roswell. He just had a hair going on. And I said, if you want to go to Roswell, walk. So he goes out there and he starts walking down the corner, Tanya's having a fit. Mom, somebody's gonna kidnap him, go get him. I said, yep. I was watching him out the window the whole time. Next thing I know, he's back up there by the house, standing up on the side of the road going like this.
That is so low. Until he got hungry, then he come in
And
and
he
said,
stood out there for
"What's
a
for
while. He
supper?"
says, Mom, what about I go next time? I said, what about it? He says, time to eat us. Yeah, it's about time to eat. I got scared. Yeah, I would have never let him go off like that.
How many of us will agree that we're put in spots that sometimes seem really bad, but there's a purpose?
Yeah.
We don't
What
want
brother?
it there.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is you might come across somebody that's struggling, and God put you in their path to be a light to them, to be an encouragement to them.
Yesterday, I know a guy named Gabriel. He was born and raised in Carlsbad, and I met him and everything. And he's a good guy. He's got to think about Italians because he's Italian. And I didn't know that he lost his wife a couple years ago. And I've known him for a while. And he was at Walmart. He come in there, and he was telling me about it. And I said, I feel so bad. I said, I know what you're going through. And me and him said, we being stupid, I guess. I took her to lunch, bought her and I was going to go straight back home. Me and him met, and I talked until it was time to get her out of school.
Uh-oh.
Like 2.5 hours talking to
Oh,
this guy.
Randy, you talk.
And it was,
Talk all the time, you're like my dad.
this was, and it was more meaningful because, he was telling me about it and the stuff he's gone through, because he lost his dad right before that, and then he lost somebody else before that. I said, I know, right? I lost a bunch of them within 3 or 4 years there. And he goes, you're the only person that knows what I'm going through right now, that he knows.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I said, I'm
there are
here
people
for it.
that say that all the
Whatever.
time, I know what you're going through, they have.
They don't.
They don't have proof.
Well, me losing my son, I don't wish it on anybody, and not that. Because that hurts you all the way to your soul. I think it does. When I lost Rosie,
I'm sure it does,
Yeah,
but your
that
hurt's
rattled me.
always gonna be different than somebody else's. How I perceive pain may not be, or hurt. When mommy and daddy passed away, mine did so quickly that it was more like a shock than it was anything. 4 days after we found out she had cancer, she was gone. And it hurt me to the point where I went and got counseling, didn't I, baby? And she helped me a lot, but when daddy passed away, it bothered me more because he lived with us, for a while. And he was always there. Same thing with mom. When his mom passed away, it's like, man, for weeks and weeks we'd stop and we didn't even go in her room. We just left it empty for a while. We'd get up, and first thing I'd do when I got up was look in the bedroom door and make sure everything was good in there. I did that for weeks and weeks and weeks. That was very hard. But each hurt was different. You know what I'm saying?
well, it is. Well, like, I think the difference between, but Rosie was sick. And I knew that, doctors even said anytime. Nathaniel, he come in there and I give him a hard time, and an hour later he was gone.
Yeah.
And I think that it caught you off guard if you weren't expecting that.
Yes.
If somebody's already been sick and they're going through all
You
the bad
expect
stuff,
it, yeah.
you kind of build up that buffer or whatever you want to call it. That
We have an
what's gonna happen,
anticipation that
Yes.
that's part of
When it
life.
comes right out of left field, that's whenever it really just rattles you hard,
Well, and that's what we're talking about. See, but if Jesus wouldn't have went through what he did that day,
We wouldn't be here, like you said.
he couldn't. When people say, "Oh, Jesus, he understands us," and as we look and try to finish this Bible study up over next week and a couple weeks, but I look at that and I begin to think to myself, just reading that scripture again, and like I said, I know it's Easter, but then I begin to read everything that happened to him. But even Jesus had to allow someone to help him.
Yes.
That wasn't the God side of him.
No, that was the human side of him.
That was a human side.
Yes.
So what's the lesson for us?
That we're human. We need to allow people to help
Well,
us.
I know the guy's side. It's hard for a guy to, can you help me? Because the most, I've told this to her, I've told it to Rosie, I've told it to everybody. What's the most fragile thing out there? A man's ego. And now we don't want to tell you about that, but that's the most fragile thing out there is a man's ego. And it is.
Well,
we don't
because-
ask for help because we just. don't
because
have it.
all the other things come into play, right? You start, the enemy starts telling you about being a failure and all that kind of stuff, and you just go down through the list. But part of the reason why that happens in a man's way of thinking is because God set us in charge as a leader, not a leader to beat people
No.
and put our thumb on them and do all that kind of stuff. To be that servant leader, where you are willing to give yourself for that person. And then I also start thinking about what Jesus put up with that day. And all of a sudden, man, like I said, I have a lot of issues. There's a lot of things in there, man, that they trigger me immediately.
I don't think I could have put up with it at all.
And then all of a sudden you begin to realize
That, thank God.
when we read in the scripture, hey, he's not going to put on you more than you can handle. And you think about how much he handled, even to the point of having to have a human being help him.
But stop and think about it.
Carry the cross.
He didn't ask for that help.
No, he
The
never.
soldier
wanted
told
it
him,
out,
yeah, the soldier
you know,
told him,
and he
carry his
Grab him,
cross.
get over
Yeah.
and everything.
And I think that was
What
God
he
working
went through.
through him.
Like you said, he was beat down where he was weak. You know.
And if you don't think that was the human side of him that didn't ask for help, that's where part A need to get to.
That we're gonna get crosswise with each other. That is, humans ask for help.
Yep.
And like you said, he had
But he was a man and he didn't want to ask.
that pride or whatever you wanna call it.
Now, we know he didn't have pride,
Ego.
but what it was is just, again, he's saying to us, look, I don't care how strong you are. He proved how strong he was by what he took.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we can't question his strength or his love for us, his compassion, none of those kind of things. But all of a sudden, what he's trying to teach us is, at some point, all of us are going to have somebody help us be able to bear up under what we're going through. In a church family, and I know we've been down in attendance, those kind of things, and I know we've struggled since COVID, really. I mean, we just got to be honest.
They stopped blaming everything on COVID.
But what happened was,
Yeah, people got lazy.
but what happened was during COVID, people broke their relationships.
Yeah, back to
It wasn't the COVID that caused it, but how hard is it for us to regain those relationships? Because when the trust gets gone, right?
that's it.
Then all of a sudden you got to rebuild all those things. But how many know you can't rebuild them unless you're together?
That got to be willing.
Lean on
That
that.
to be a willing thing.
Yeah, it's got to be a willing. We got to be together in it. And I think about
Lately, I've just been an ear for some people.
and that's all you can need to do.
You're helping them. You're there.
Because sometimes
Just venting, you know, you're there.
the most important thing is sometimes being quiet.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
That is a hard one.
At first I was trying to respond and help them, but then I realized, you just want to talk, just let them talk and listen.
Because what happens the reason we have to be quiet is because sometimes we don't have the answers.
Well, that goes,
Most of the time.
when you said you need to stop, 'cause that person is talking at you. He's venting, you know, talking to someone, you're expecting a response.
Yeah.
That person that's talking to you, he wasn't looking for a response,
No,
he's
they're just dumping their, this is my troubles and I want to get them off my chest.
Yeah.
And so we look at all that, and one of the things in the church, because one thing about our church, even though no matter how little we've gotten or how big we've gotten, we've always tried to maintain that closeness with each other. And we've always tried to illustrate that, whether it's Brother Hay or Brother Michael, and hopefully others in the church, that when somebody comes in, they can feel part of us. They don't feel pushed away. They don't feel so judged that they can't stay. Or they don't see, and like I said, I've learned over the years a lot of things that I thought were the most important things. I always tease about the shorts thing, but I know some people really think, well, Barry, I don't know how that could be an issue. Well, you gotta understand, it was different 25 years ago.
It sure was.
And it was different 45 years ago for us.
Well, yeah.
I had a sister-in-law, and, my wife and my brother Earl, and, they want to go to Baptist church. That's where we all come from, Baptist church, but anyway. Later on, I asked her, I said, well, why not? They said they're gonna vote on it. And she said, I ain't putting up with that, you know. I said, look, I have what they call, you bring your book from the last church.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, that's from long ago.
Yeah.
And see, if you're a spy or something else like that, they weed them out. So you had to have a document from the last place you was at, you know. So I said, that's all I was lying. They ain't gonna do it. And I stand for everybody, they vote on me. I said, no, I ain't doing that. So there's one element why some of them are not in church.
And how many times do people feel that pressure? And I know, we talk about this all the time. If you have this expectation, don't misunderstand, brother Ray. We need to have an expectation to be as close to being like Christ as we possibly can. That's where we're headed, right?
Absolutely.
That's the journey we're on. But we also have to be careful that we don't have a standard that don't have a whole lot to do with Jesus. Does that make sense? Like we always tease, you know, I've known Brother Randy as long as probably most anybody. And you know, they were one of the first families we met, and I've never given grief over his hair.
No.
Probably because I have a lot of brothers that have long hair. So that's
My
okay.
hair used to be longer than this, so yeah.
Yeah, but here's
And
Brother
it used
Hayes.
to be black, but this is married with children, you know that?
Mine is, I can't find it. But anyway.
Well, my brother Gary says mine turned gray, his turned loose.
Yeah, there you
Well,
go.
see, in your case, you know, they tell me, say, well, grass doesn't grow on a busy street.
There you go.
That's true, too.
Well, and I always say things like that because how many know that I'm not trying to be facetious, but I can tell you there was a period of time in the church, Brother Randy would have walked in, he would have been just
Stand back.
and I say it all the time, a lot of the ladies, if they would have showed up in pants, I'll never forget one of my first things in Clovis when I first came into the Church of God. And Sister Hay remember because she worked with this lady, and it was a lady that she worked with at Farwell, and she gave her heart to the Lord, and she wore pants. And the pastor's wife was giving her so much grief,
Oh my goodness.
even to the point of telling her she couldn't even be a Christian if she didn't wear a dress.
Well, that happened to Wanda. She said, your mom invited me to go to church. I said, and she tells you you have to wear a dress. She said, no, I'm not going.
That's the way it was back then.
So we have to be careful how many expectations we put on people that have nothing to do with God. Does that make sense? So we have to separate that stuff out. And so when Jesus is standing there and they're beating him and they're spitting on his face, they're mocking him, they're making fun of him. I understand. He's still the human side of him. He's a man.
Yes.
And there's no doubt in this guy's mind that he was having an issue.
Major issue.
But instead of calling those angels, he endured it. And here's the secret. He didn't endure it for him. He endured it for us.
Yeah.
And so I guess the teaching becomes, how much are we willing to endure for others to find their way?
By his stripes we are healed.
Yep. And sometimes the stripes that were put on Christ leads us to a place where the healing doesn't always have to be physical. How many think there's a lot of spiritual healing?
Oh, yes.
It has to be that.
How hard is it for people that have been hurt? You know, this beat down, and I know Brother Hayes spent a lot of time on number one, and I always do.
Yeah.
But this beat down thing, I look around in the church right now, and there are so many people beat down.
Yep.
Yes.
And if you're focused, I gotta be careful, because if you're watching my Facebook, I'm gonna try to be as politically correct as I can. But I'm never very good at this, okay? But I understood a long time ago that we have to be so careful about how we represent Christ. How much are you willing to endure for somebody to get saved? Are you willing to take them using some bad language towards you? Yeah. Or how about them mistreating you?
Well,
When I got after somebody for using much of bad language, and the next week I was using it.
Yeah, so you really gotta be double careful.
I was like, wait a minute, I was just all over your case about using bad language, and here I am. And I'm just, it's just blowing out of my mouth, it's just bad.
Yes.
And how many know that the enemy knows how to do that?
Yes.
And so we get into these places where we gotta understand that a lot of people are never gonna open this book. The only book they're ever gonna see is you. And if they need to be able to see Jesus in you. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know anybody that does this right 100% of the time. I try my best. See, Kaylee told you that I didn't give that person money the first time. I had to wait until she was giving me grief and then go give them money.
Hey, follow in Dad's footsteps.
But sometimes we all need an encouragement to be the encourager. Does that make sense? Because how many times have you gotten to a place where you go, I don't care, I'm done with this person.
Oh, yeah, man.
That's a lot of times.
We all need daily encouragement.
yes.
I just thought about this, your statement said to include people and not exclude them. And I'm like, oh, that's a hard one.
It is. And that's kind of become our model in our classes on Wednesday night in our Sunday school class. We got to figure out ways to include people, not push them away. Now look, I know.
If they don't want to be included.
Well,
There's some
We gotta
that
find a way to include them anyway.
okay.
Some just aren't ready.
some aren't ready.
Certain
So,
place, you know, they're like, they're
do
ready.
you really think this guy that picked up Jesus' cross was ready to do it that day? That's just a question.
Right.
I think they just showed up to see
They're
the
like, you
spectacle.
woke
is
up
what I
thinking,
think.
They ended up being part of the
What?
Right.
Well, here's what I like what it says. It says here, it's funny because what it says, as he was coming out of the country and passing by, that's when they compelled him to carry the cross, right?
Yeah.
But,
It's like,
hey
they
man,
asked
this
for a
guy's like,
volunteer, and everybody around him took one step backwards.
so,
Yeah.
it's kind of like everybody in the church is gotten away from this person. But God's compelling you.
Yeah.
Pick up that cross. Oh man. You know, I know Brother Hayes not very deep in my teaching and preaching a lot of times. At least ways I've been told that a lot over the years. But I want you to think about that. How many people do that?
How many people are actually ready for the meat of the word and they're still drinking milk?
I
Well,
like that milk because it's nice and warm and cozy.
Yeah, like.
So, I don't know what this down here, how long is it, where it says bear one another's burdens?
Yep.
That's like, but, you know, him bearing that cross, that's.
and that's
He was
and
carrying the sins of all mankind on his shoulders.
then you have a man that's coming in minding his own business. And here's what I want to tell you, I directed. Yeah, sometimes you need minding your own business.
Yeah.
And God goes,
Yeah.
I got a job for you. And when God gives you a job, you're going, that's Brother Michael's job. And God's
I
like,
don't know nothing about that.
That's right.
yeah.
Where'd you talk to Donna? She knows.
And I know it's about time to go, but I want you to think about it, Brother. How many times do we really do that? Do we have trouble allowing God to use us? And how many times are we really willing? And sometimes I think, again, God's will. People always think it's this great mystery. I really believe with all my heart, you know, there's been a lot of things since, you know, Brother Hay had to step down as full-time pastor, those kind of things when we were struggling with our parents. And you got to be careful you don't start making excuses.
Yes.
But on the flip side of that, there are a lot of people that could never understand that decision that I made. I remember the overseer's wife flat told me, "You're not going to do that." I said, "Yes, sir. You're not my boss." But anyway, but the point was, Brother Hay had already prayed. But here's the thing: for years, Brother Secretary, you were here. Or Randy was here. Okay, I know Larry and Helen haven't been with us that long, or Fred, or some of the others. and I know Randy was in and out, but for years I always preached the same thing. There's a reason why God said you start here, and then you go over here. And you know what's so interesting? This is what Jesus said. The first commandment of promise, anybody know what that is?
Honor your mother and father.
You gotta honor your mother and your father. And I even had someone come to me that was in a pretty high position, and they made this statement to me. They said, well, you're like that guy that told Jesus that he needed to go bury his family, and Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. I said, you need to be real careful what you're saying. I said, because number one, that wasn't what was going on. You don't know that man's heart. How many know Jesus did? How many know that Brother Hayes' heart is a whole different place? My heart, and you can ask Sister Hay, it broke for a long time because for 45 years, that's all I know. And all of a sudden, you know, these other things come along there. And it wasn't a desire to find an excuse, Brother Randy, not to do the right thing. As a matter of fact, I kind of felt like this guy with the cross a little bit. I think that was kind of forced on me. But if I'm going to preach it, I mean, I better be willing to put it in practice. So I know, Brother Sanitary's lost some brothers, and I understand. We went through some of them things. And we both lost some good friends from the church. And people say, well, you guys didn't hang out, you didn't go do this and go do that. How many know that's not what families are? But over the years, how many know that sometimes we had a lot of disagreements with them? Sometimes some of the things they'd say, you'd have to go, no, I don't think so. And we'd have to work through those problems, right? But you know what's so interesting? Through all those things, we always stuck together.
That's what you do with your brother, you know.
And so one of the things we're trying to teach,
but sometimes I don't like it, you know.
yeah, which is what we're trying to teach the group, which has always been our motto here, to bring the group behind us along. Because we don't want to be gone and then the church be shut down. You know, Brother Randy and you guys and all of you. Now Larry's getting pretty close to me, but he's still younger, so he's okay.
Just think of that now. Always be younger than your older brother.
Yeah, no matter what, he'll still be younger. But what Brother Hay is trying to say is,
I outlived my siblings' expectations by 31 years.
Yeah. Well, and the question becomes,
Just getting started.
how much are you willing to go out on that limb for them? And is Jesus telling you and calling you to be that intercessor? So you can either encourage the ones coming up, or you can find fault with everything they do.
Well, see, there's a lot of that out there in the world, and there will become something in.
Yep.
Gotta make sure we're ready.
Yep. He's got to make sure we're ready. And like you always said, Brother Sanitary, I believe with you that God has a big plan for our church. We just haven't seen it. But do you know before you can see that, you have to remain what?
Diligent.
It's vigilant and faithful. You got to keep going. And what's so funny, financially we're doing really good compared. We've all been through those times. We didn't have any money, and now we do pretty good. And
But you know what? We've never had a bill that went unpaid.
Nope.
We might not have had a whole lot at that end of that month or starting the next month, but he always provided enough money to take care of what had to be taken care of.
And so we look at all those things over the years, but we have to be able to tell that next group, especially our young ones like her, and some of the younger ones that aren't here, and like Christine's daughter, we need to teach them because they're at that place where they're pretty grown now. And we need to teach them, hey, it's okay. But here's the most important thing. What happens when somebody leaves and they come back and Brother Hayes not here? I'm here, but I'm not here. I'm not in the church. How does that change the equation? Do you know how many times people have come back to the church and the first thing they say is,
Hey, that old guy here that used to give me $1 in Sunday school?
yeah, or they say, oh man, Brother Hayes still here, so sometimes they leave again. Yeah, there are a few of those, just so you know.
Well,
But
I've been here hitting this, like you said, and if I would ever come, like, I can't remember what his name is, but he was the pastor of the church. And that was when Michael first got started, was going. And,
Oh, Brother Morris.
I can't remember what his name is, but you guys had a house here and he got rid of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I remember we going to church and he preached that he needed a payment for his truck. And everybody started donating money like crazy.
Good job, Bob.
And I thought, wait, that's not what we're here for, not for your pickup. And Rosie had a mental breakdown then. She grabbed a handful of my hair and out the door we went.
Had a handful of your.
I did.
No, she didn't have it right
Taylor,
She
you
had
can
enough.
turn that off if you want to, baby.
It
It's
just-
time for us to pray.
That didn't set with her at all, not even a little bit. And I thought, oh, well, here it comes. I was
Well-
gonna make a mad dash out the door because I knew that she was gonna go up on that stage and
Yeah.
I knew.
Well, here's what happens. Pastors need to be taken care of. Brother Hay understands that. Don't misunderstand me. But by the same token, how many think that we have to share this together?
Yes.
Brother Michael, we pay him. And compared to others, we pay him okay. I promise you, the $2,000 he gets from us compared to most preachers isn't very much. And sometimes people get aggravated with him because you don't do this and you don't do that, but they forget he's working a full-time job.
Yeah.
And he still has a family. How many know his family's in flux right now?
Oh, his birds are leaving the nest, so he's
Yeah.
having stuff fun.
So while his birds leave the nest,
It's just beginning to raise.
yeah, you know what? You're thinking the same way as me. His issue hadn't even got started yet, but we're gonna leave that for somebody else.
Finish. But he is married to my daughter. That's doesn't
I know all my kids, they leave, they multiply, then they come back.
Oh, no, I don't let mine come back.
Mine did.
I remember
Mine like the better
came
stay.
back to my parents' house for a while.
All my kids.
Well, I was working towards getting back out of there. I was
It's
like,
been 4
you know
years,
what?
it's been 4 years.
I love you
I'll
guys, but
text her
I
happy
am not
birthday.
staying.
When you go back, it's never the same.
They didn't, they didn't say.
I'm not getting a response.
The reason our kids never came back, if they did, but just for a short period of time, his dad's rules don't ever change.
Yeah.
See, when I went back, I had a wife, 3 kids when I went back. That was like, hey, buddy, dude, you better do something. You can't just lounge around here, get a job, and get on your own feet again.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we're gonna pray, but I hope you got something out of Bible study tonight, and I appreciate y'all helping, because that's what we want this to be, just like on Sunday school. We really want it to be a time where everybody gets to share, because that's how we learn. When you talk, because everybody has a different opinion. You already figured out, even Sister Hay and I, after 51 years, we don't have the same opinion on a lot of things.
Lots.
Not just 1 or 2. 6,000.
We're gonna leave that, it isn't that many.
We agree to disagree, let's put it that way.
I'm putting my blinder up, and I'm not even gonna look at that.
So we're gonna pray, but I appreciate you, but ask God to let you know if you're that person that needs to help somebody pick up a cross this week.
You know, I got that thing on the chalkboard. A burden, share your burdens, and it's a lighter load.
That's right. Yep, we'll get to that here probably next week. I'm gonna try my best to fix this next week. But let's pray. Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to share your word. You promised us, God, that it would never return void. And Father, I just ask that we'll find a good place in our hearts to take root and grow. And Lord, help each one of us to be willing to pick up that cross alongside a brother, a sister. God, help us to reach out to others and to be your